Last month on a luxury cruise ship drifting through the void of deep space, I thought maybe I could start over. I'm Jake, 35, an engineer who just wanted to fix the ship and escape my personal troubles. The ship was massive and old, creaking with every movement. I could hear strange mechanical noises, like it was alive and groaning from the strain of being lost in the dark. After a maintenance check one night, I heard a loud metallic scraping echo through the halls. At first, I wasn't too worried. It had to be a minor engine issue, right? But the sound nagged at me. It felt like something was watching from the shadows. I did see flickers of movement just out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there was nothing there. I shook my head and told myself it was just fatigue, but as days passed, things got stranger. One night, a crew member, face pale, approached me. He said he'd seen equipment malfunction and felt dizzy for no reason. I thought he was overworked. He had that haunted look in his eyes. Then I noticed them two shapes darting away when I turned. I told myself it was stress, but my heart raced every time I walked alone in those dimly lit halls. The noises grew worse. Whispers drifted along the ship's corridors, fading when I got close. The feeling of isolation pressed on us, heavier than the weight of space itself. I felt cold, so cold. We started avoiding each other. I believed it was the disorientation. But I felt something more, something alive in the ship. Then the communication system went down. We were cut off. I told myself it was just a wiring issue. But panic seeped into our daily routine. Each night felt like a test. I kept my head down, focusing on repairs, ignoring the growing dread. The shadows were darker, pulling at the corners of my mind that I didn't want to admit it, but I began to wonder if we were dealing with something mechanical or something else entirely. The stress was eating at me. Late at night, quiet wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. Something felt wrong. One night, while working alone, I heard the scraping again. It echoed louder, filling my ears. I froze. It felt like I was being pulled into a whirlpool of dread. I turned my head slowly, and that's when my heart dropped. I wasn't alone. There was something there, a shape lurking just beyond my sight. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I squinted into the darkness, and the shadows seemed to shift, drawing closer. I heard a whisper, cold and chilling, and then my heart sank. I realized whatever was out there, it was coming for me. I stumbled back instinctively. My heart thundered in my chest, but it felt like the shadows were tightening around me, holding me in place. I squinted again, desperate to catch a clearer glimpse of whatever was lurking there, but the darkness seemed to swallow the light whole. "Is anyone there?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling. Silence hung in the air like an unanswered question. The faint hum of the ship's systems was the only reassurance I had that I was still aboard. But that whisper, a ghostly echo, drifted again, wrapping around me like ice. Suddenly, the scraping sound cut off, leaving only the silence of the ship with me. I forced myself to back away, but my feet felt anchored to the ground. That was when I caught movement, a flicker just on the edge of my vision. It darted away quickly. Whatever it was fast. "Hello?" I shouted this time, hoping my voice could pierce the monotony of this empty place. I wanted to believe I was trapped in a nightmare, but no, that wasn't right. This was real, and the fear clawing at my insides was all too real that I turned to leave, my hands shaking as I felt my way along the cold metal walls. The shadows shifted again, moving like liquid. They were alive. I cursed myself for walking alone. I should have gone back to the crew quarters, but I had been too stubborn, too intent on fixing the ship before everything went completely under that I pulled out my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. Instead of bringing comfort, it felt meager against the encroaching shadows. I scanned the corridor, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of the light. But I didn't believe it. I couldn't fight the feeling that something was behind me, then I felt a cold breath on my neck, a shiver that froze my blood that I whirled around, the flashlight beam trembling. Nothing. Just darkness, deeper and more unyielding. I caught my breath, but it hitched when I saw it, a shape heavier than shadows, outlined against the far wall. The thing shifted as if sensing me watching, and I froze once more, paralyzed by dread. It was humanoid in form but distorted, a mockery of a human drawn in strokes of black. I felt an urge to run, but my feet were rooted to where I stood. My instincts were screaming at me to escape, and finally, they took over. I turned on my heel and bolted down the corridor, my heart pounding in my throat. I rushed past maintenance rooms, throwing glances behind me, expecting to see that shape chasing after me. My chest burned with every step, but I couldn't stop. I barreled down another hall and suddenly skidded to a stop at the entrance of the main control room. Inside, the screens flickered with static and the air buzzed with an eerie energy. I was breathless, shaking. I needed to gather my thoughts, my bearings, and figure out what was happening to us on this ship. But as I turned to check the doors behind me, they swung shut with a bang. My heart sank as I heard the unsettling whisper again, growing louder, bouncing around the room. I gripped the edge of the control panel to steady myself, but the shadows began to seep in, filling the space, and then I found myself saying something I couldn't comprehend. "Who are you?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice as the scraping returned, louder, moving closer. Then everything went dark. I gasped as darkness enveloped me. The control room, once a familiar space filled with blinking lights and monitors, vanished. I felt an oppressive weight settle on my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. I blinked, hoping to dispel the void, but it remained, swallowing any trace of light. Then came the noise, not the whisper or the scraping. It was a low growl, resonating in the silence. My instincts flared again. I crouched low, feeling around for anything I could use. My fingers brushed the cool metal of the control panel, and I fumbled for the emergency beacon. The light activated in a flash, illuminating the corners of the room. Shadows recoiled, revealing brief glimpses of old machinery and cables, but nothing moved. I steadied my breath, reminding myself to stay calm. The last thing I needed was to let fear rule me. That was when I saw it. A flash of movement, darting across the far wall. A blur of darkness among shadows. My heart jumped into my throat as I turned. What was it? My mind raced with possibilities. Another crew member? A creature? I felt trapped and exposed, my entire body trembling. "Show yourself," I called, attempting to sound assertive. Deep inside, though, I was anything but. My flashlight flickered, sending erratic beams dancing on the walls. Just when I thought the light might fail entirely, it steadied. In the sudden clarity, I spotted something strange. It looked like a sigil, carved into the wall, glowing faintly beneath layers of grime. It resembled a twisted, broken version of a ship's logo, but upside down. What did it mean? I hesitated. The growling sound returned, closer now, echoing off the walls and wrapping around me like a fog. Panic bubbled within me. I had to get out of here. With no time to spare, I turned away from the sigil and dashed towards the nearest exit. The door stood slightly ajar as if mocking my flight. My legs propelled me forward, each push against the cool floor fueled by sheer determination. Then the room rumbled. An unseen force slammed against the walls, sending tremors through my bones. I spun around, eyes wide, searching for the source. The growl rose, twisting into a shrill shriek that rattled every nerve in my body. Suddenly, from the edge of the shadows, a figure emerged, a twisted silhouette that flickered in and out of existence, like static on a breaking screen. I felt my blood freeze as I realized what it was. No, not just what. Who? Jason? I gasped, recognition flooding in as the face of my crewmate materialized only to dissolve back into shadows. The fear surged anew. Escape. His voice echoed, strained and distorted. You have to escape. Panic clenched my heart. I stumbled backward, the base of my foot catching on a loose cable. I fell hard, and as I scrambled to my feet, Jason's form flickered again, the growl blending with his fading scream. It was clear now. Whatever was hunting us had taken him and wasn't finished. I needed to move. I bolted toward the exit, but before my hand could grasp the handle, the shadows twisted together, blocking my way. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. I had to find a way out, but was there even a point to it? My pulse raced as I stared down the corridor that was swallowed in darkness, knowing it was just the beginning of something much worse. I took a deep breath, forcing my feet to move despite the terror gnawing at my insides. I couldn't stay here, not with Jason's warning and that monstrous growl echoing in my mind. The darkness seemed alive, pressing in on me as I whirled around to find another way. There had to be another exit. I pressed on, feeling my way along the wall, not daring to let my flashlight wander too far into the depths of shadow. The low hum of the ship's systems was barely audible over the pounding of my heart, but it gave me a sense of familiarity that I clung to. As I crept forward, I spotted a door further down the hall. The outline was vague and shrouded in darkness, but I rushed toward it with a mix of hope and dread. My breath came quicker, and the air felt thick as I neared. Just when I reached for the handle, a shattering sound erupted from behind me. A window, maybe? Glass exploded, the shards scattering across the floor like raindrops. Instinct kicked in, and I ducked, barely managing to avoid what felt like a rush of energy. I turned to see a shadow darting across the room. It was swift and fluid, moving in a way that left no doubt it was hunting. My heart sank. The door suddenly felt miles away. Not here, I whispered to myself, the words feeling futile. I glanced back over my shoulder as the growl returned, more menacing this time. Closer. I sprinted for the door, thrusting it open with all my weight. It creaked ominously as I stepped into an empty cargo hold, the stench of rust and decay hitting me hard. The light flickered above, casting an erratic glow that barely illuminated my way. With no time to think, I pushed through the room, scanning for anything that could help. That was when I spotted a lifeboat tethered to the wall near the far end. My brain kicked into high gear. If I could get to it, maybe, just maybe, I could escape, but there was no time for caution. I bolted toward the lifeboat, each step echoing like a war drum. I could feel the presence stalking me, lurking just beyond the flickering light. As I reached the lifeboat, I heard it again, the growl, closer than ever. My hands fumbled with the release mechanism, fear twisting my fingers. The sound of deep, rattling breaths filled the air. For a moment, I hesitated. Was this the end? Defeated by darkness, I pulled the lever, and the lifeboat crashed to the floor with a thunderous clang. It jolted, and I flung myself inside, shutting the door behind me just as shadows blitzed past. I could hear claws scraping against metal, relentless in pursuit. I fumbled for the controls. My heart raced as I initiated the launch sequence. The screens flickered to life, beeping warnings of low fuel and system errors. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. Would it even work? Then I saw it. The faintest outline of Jason's face, flickering on the screen beside me. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Instead, the growling returned, echoing inside the cockpit. Not just us, he mouthed, eyes wide with warning. Cold dread filled me as I realized whatever was in this ship wasn't just after us. I had to escape, but now I had an even bigger problem on my hands. Sinking deeper into despair, I began to wonder, what had followed our crew? What had joined us in this endless dark? I pulled myself tight against the lifeboat's wall, desperately trying to drown out the growling. The sound reverberated in my chest, sending waves of panic throughout my body. The warning lights flickered around me, their harsh glow illuminating the small space, but the flickering only added to my sense of unease. Jason's face faded from the screen. I wished desperately that he had been able to say something meaningful, something that could help. Slowly, I turned to the controls, my hands trembling. I needed to launch this lifeboat before whatever hunted us broke through my only barrier. With quick, shaky breaths, I punched in the launch code we had practiced during drills. The screens responded, launch sequence engaged. But as I watched the countdown, I realized something was off. Rather than the conventional green and comforting beeps, the screen displayed a series of red alerts, warnings I'd never seen before. My stomach dropped. Panic threatened to swallow me whole. Just then, I felt the lifeboat shudder. Something heavy slammed against the outside, rattling the walls. I nearly screamed, forcing myself to clamp down on the rising terror. No, not now. I hissed under my breath, feeling sweat pooling at my hairline. The countdown continued, but my fingers flew to the emergency override. One wrong move, and I'd be trapped in a metal coffin. I could feel the growling bear down on me, a constant gnawing reminder of my mortality. In a terrified burst of adrenaline, I yanked the lever to abort the launch, hoping it wasn't too late. The alarms cut off. The heavy silence began to settle in, but it was a silence that sent my mind racing. What had that thing been? Had it come aboard after us, or had it been waiting? Suddenly, the screen flickered back to life. Jason reappeared, his expression twisted in fear. He swung a hand wildly, mouthing words again. I squinted at the screen, heart pounding in rhythm with the depth of his panic. Then I made out a few words: containment breach, check the cargo. The cargo? My mind raced through the possibilities. What cargo? Just then, a low scraping sound echoed through the hull, louder than before. Not again. I flinched, glancing towards the door. The heavy growl returned, punctuated by a rumble that shook the lifeboat. The air felt electric, charged with the threat of discovery. I couldn't afford to be found now. With little time left, I scoured the cramped space for any means of survival. That's when I spotted a storage panel to my right. It was partially ajar, almost as if it had been left open in a hurry. My instincts kicked in. I had to check it. Biting my lip, I wrestled with the panel, pulling it open. Inside was a small arsenal of emergency supplies, flares, a survival knife, and more importantly a radio. I couldn't just sit here waiting for the unknown to come for me. I worked quickly, grabbing what I could and securing the knife at my side. Just as I secured the last flare, I heard another thud against the hull, sending shockwaves through the lifeboat. Time was running out. I had to move. As the walls vibrated around me, I made a decision. Whatever was outside wouldn't wait for me to be ready. It was now or never. I pressed my back to the wall, steeling myself. The door felt like a potential portal to freedom or death. My heart raced as I prepared to confront whatever hunted me in this vast emptiness. I took a deep breath, hand hovering over the door latch, then everything went dark. I gasped as darkness enveloped me. The absence of light felt suffocating. I forced my eyes to adjust, straining to see something, anything. My heart thrummed violently in my chest. Just moments ago, I was on the brink of either escape or facing a terrifying unknown. Now, I was trapped in a void that I stood frozen for a heartbeat, caught between flight and fight. A low growl rumbled through the lifeboat again, reverberating through the silence, as if taunting me. Whatever was outside, it hadn't gone away. I gripped the survival knife tightly, willing it to be a source of strength rather than fear. Then, without warning, the emergency lights flickered back on, bathing the interior in a sickly yellow glow. My thoughts raced. Was the power restored, or was this a cruel trick? I flicked the radio on, praying for a response. Static filled the air, crackling and hissing like 1,000 angry insects. Hello? Can anyone hear me? I shouted into the device, my voice breaking the silence. Nothing but static replied. My pulse raced. It was just me in this uncertain dark that I took a tentative step toward the door, feeling my way around the cold, metallic walls. My hand brushed against the controls, and I could hear a light beeping from somewhere. It felt wrong. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to run, but I needed to know what I was up against. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply to suppress my rising panic. Then I opened the door, ready to face the unknown. The hatch creaked as it swung upward, and a rush of cold air poured into the lifeboat. I peered outside, squinting against the harsh brightness of the starfield beyond. Nothing but the vastness of space greeted me. But then, I heard it again. The growl was louder now, more menacing, echoing from somewhere beyond the dark void of the lifeboat's opening. My body tensed. The sound was close, too close that I stepped out, knife raised, eyes scanning the shadows. The lifeboat stood like a beacon among the stars, vulnerable and exposed. And that's when I saw it. A shadow darted across the edge of my vision, shifting just beyond the lifeboat's perimeter. A sleek, monstrous shape. My heart dropped as my mind raced to comprehend what I was seeing. It was clearly not a creature from Earth. The way it moved was unnatural, fluid. It paused, locked in a crouch, tail flicking like a predator sizing up its prey. My breath caught in my throat. Panic surged, and I took a step back as the creature slinked closer. It had a glimmering scale-like body and eyes that glowed like dying stars. I had to warn Jason. I needed help. I had to escape, but then, I heard a noise. A new sound that sent me reeling, a voice on the radio, faint but unmistakable, murmuring through the static. Containment breach, it's here. My blood ran cold. What had I unleashed? Just as I scrambled to turn the radio up, the creature lunged into the light. Immediate instinct kicked in. I bolted back, heart racing, ready to fight or flee. But before I could move, the lights flickered again, and suddenly, everything plunged into darkness once more. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, as blackness swallowed me whole. Cold metal pressed against my back. My instincts screamed to move, to hide, but I was frozen, as paralyzed by fear as I was by the uncertainty of what lurked nearby. Then, a sound cut through the silence. A low hiss, almost like breathing. I strained my ears, trying to pinpoint its source. The emergency lights flickered on again, illuminating the space in a flash. The jagged edges of the lifeboat's interior were stark against the artificial light, but it was the creature that caught my eye. It had backed away, disappearing into the deeper shadows where the light didn't reach. The way it twisted and slithered sent chills down my spine. Was it toying with me? I could feel its weight in the air, as if it had more awareness of me than I did of it. I glanced at the radio, desperate for a reprieve from this nightmare. Hello? Please, if anyone can hear me. Static crackled, drowning out my voice. My throat tightened in response to the creeping dread. I could feel the creature, watching, waiting. That I needed to get out of here. If I could just find Jason, maybe we could figure out a way to survive. I took a shaky breath and moved with agonizing caution towards the hatch. My instincts urged me to bolt, but each step felt monumental. I could hear the creature again, that unnatural breath, echoing softly in the void. When I reached the door, I peered outside. The starfield was beautiful in its cold infinity, yet the beauty felt tainted. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. Come on, Jason. Where are you? I whispered, frustration bubbling beneath my fear. Clenching the knife, I took a deep breath to steady myself. I had to move, focusing on Jason was my only escape. As I stepped outside, my back tingled with the feeling of being watched. The shadows danced unnaturally, and every instinct told me to run. In the distance, I spotted lights flickering from another section of the ship. Relief surged through me. Signal lights. I bolted toward them, each footfall echoing in the vast emptiness around me. But a sudden crash made me stop in my tracks. Again, I was met with darkness. The emergency lights sputtered, and I cursed under my breath. I looked around, now illuminated only by the distant starlight. The growl returned, fierce and raspy, a reminder that I was not alone. Then, a flash illuminated the area momentarily, and I caught sight of the creature. It was right behind me, closer, more menacing. I spun around, adrenaline surging. I had no time to think, no time to hesitate. I started to run. My feet pounded against the metal grates beneath me, each step echoing through the void. I needed to make it to those lights. I could still hear the growl, but it wasn't as close as before. Maybe I had gained some distance, but dread curled in my stomach. If this thing was toying with me, it could decide to pounce at any moment. All at once, a buzzing sound filled the air, sharp and painful. It tore through the darkness, followed by another voice on the radio. "Evacuate immediately. It's coming." The message sent a jolt of adrenaline through my veins, spurring me forward. I was about to run headfirst into chaos, but I had to know what awaited me at the lights. What would I find there? And was Jason even alive? I couldn't afford to slow down now. I wouldn't be able to turn back. Each step forward felt like a gamble, and I was desperate to find out if I was running toward salvation or doom. I sprinted toward the flickering lights, the echo of my footsteps swallowed by the humming void around me. The growl still haunted me, lurking just below the surface, daring me to stumble or lose focus. The weight of the ship's metallic structure pressed down on me, each corridor a potential trap. Finally, I reached the entrance to the command center. The door was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open with a hard shove. It creaked loudly, stirring the remnants of my courage. Inside, the room was in disarray. Screens flickered with distorted images, and scattered equipment littered the floor. "Jason!" I called out, urgency lacing my voice. I scanned the area, searching for any sign of him. My heart sank. It felt wrong. The silence rang too loud, too complete. Only the faint hum of the ship's systems persisted, as if the world held its breath. That I moved further inside, careful to avoid the debris. With each step, I felt more exposed. Then a flicker of movement caught my eye, something darting in the shadows. I froze. Was it the creature? My heart slammed against my chest as I turned, knife clutched tightly in my hand. That S when I saw him. Jason was huddled in the far corner, pale and trembling. "Thank God," I muttered, rushing toward him. He looked up at me, wild-eyed. You shouldn't have come here." His voice quaked, thick with fear. "What are you talking about? We need to get out." I waved my knife, willing him to focus. "What happened?" He shook his head. It's too late. They're everywhere. We thought we could hide, but..." His voice trailed off, and he stared past me, terror widening his eyes. I spun around, knife raised. The growl came again, sharper this time, echoing from outside the command center. The lights on the control panels flickered quickly, as if they too sensed the approaching threat. "Jason, we need to move. Now," I urged, grabbing his arm and pulling him to his feet. But the moment I did, the lights above us blinked out, plunging us into darkness. Only the emergency red glow provided any semblance of visibility. "Stay close," I hissed, feeling my way through the fraught silence. I heard scuffling noises outside, vibrations shuddering through the walls. Whatever was hunting us was not far. And it was angry. Jason stumbled beside me, fear palpable in the air. "We can't go back the way you came. It's out there," he shouted, panic gripping his voice. I felt the walls close in, options narrowing. "What do you mean? Where do we go?" Just then, blaring alarms cut through the anticipation, their mechanical shrieks blindingly urgent. "What now?" I shouted over the cacophony. Jason pointed at a service hatch. "That way. It leads to maintenance tunnels. We can escape there." I glanced back at the door, my instinct screaming. "Hurry." We stumbled toward the hatch, the growl rising into a fury outside the room. I could almost sense the creature's breath on our backs, mingling with the urgency of our movements. Would we make it in time? As I kicked the hatch open, I could almost hear the beast closing in, desperate to taste its prey. Then everything went dark again. I felt the cold metal of the hatch under my hands as I kicked it open, and a rush of stale air hit me. The darkness ahead was thick, almost tangible. I hesitated, thinking about the creature that was likely only moments away from finding us. "Jason, get in," I urged, pushing him forward. He entered the maintenance tunnel first, his breath quickening as he groped in the dark. I followed closely behind, keeping my knife unsheathed. The tunnel was narrow. Pipes crisscrossed above us, and the clanking noises of the ship's machinery echoed eerily. I could barely see Jason's silhouette in front of me. Fear gripped me tightly. What if we were trapped down here? What if the creature found us before we made it to safety? We moved cautiously, every movement punctuated by the distant sounds of metal scraping against metal. It felt like something was watching our every step. "Do you think it followed us?" Jason whispered, his voice barely audible. "I can't think about that right now," I replied, forcing myself to sound confident. But my heart twisted at the thought. "We just need to keep going." We stumbled deeper into the tunnel, and I risked a glance behind us. The darkness seemed to pulse, almost alive, and I shuddered at the memory of the growl. We had to find a way to outsmart whatever it was, but the tunnel branched out into 3 different pathways. "Which way?" I asked, breathlessly, staring at the forks ahead. Jason looked at me, panic flooding his features. I don't know." Just as I was about to take a step toward the middle path, a loud crash echoed from behind us. The sound of metal tearing and splintering made my heart race even faster. A figure loomed in the distance, a dark shape emerging from the flickering emergency lights further down the tunnel. "Shit!" I yelled. "Run!" We dashed to the left tunnel. The air felt charged with dread. Each deep breath smelled like oil and rust, but I didn't dare slow down. I could hear the creature thrashing behind us, its growl transforming into a roar as it pursued us, relentless. The tunnel turned sharply, and just as I thought I saw a glimmer of light ahead, I crashed into something solid. A wall? No, it was a door. My heart raced as I fumbled for the handle, relief flooding my body when it swung open. We tumbled through, falling into an expansive chamber. The hum of machinery was deafening, and blinking lights filled the space with an eerie glow that I pushed myself to my feet, my gaze darting. "Where are we?" Jason's eyes were wide as he stared into the room, confusion mixed with awe. "I think this is the ship's power core, but it looks different. Like it's been modified." Before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind us. The sounds of the creature faded for a moment, and I felt a wave of uncertain hope wash over me. Maybe we were safe. But then I heard the unmistakable sound of clicking and growling, this time, closer than ever. "Jason," I whispered, dread curling in my stomach. "We're not alone here." I turned to face the dimly lit chamber, heart pounding. What else was lurking in the shadows, waiting for us to fall into its trap? The room was swathed in a low red light, the kind that makes shadows dance across the walls. Jason and I stood frozen for a moment, scanning the power core, but dread quickly returned as the sounds of sharp claws dragged against metal, echoing ominously in the chamber. I could sense something lurking, waiting to strike. Clutching my knife with shaking hands, I glanced at Jason. "What do we do?" My voice trembled slightly, strained with panic. "We have to hide," he replied, scanning the room for any potential refuge. There were large containers stacked in the corner, remnants of the ship's old provisions. They looked like they could provide some cover. Before we could move, the door rattled violently, and a series of low growls slithered through the cracks. The creature was not done with us. It was relentless, a predator honed in on its prey. I felt the walls pulse, an electric sensation that set my teeth on edge. "Now!" I hissed, darting toward the containers. Jason followed closely, and we squeezed behind them just as the door burst open. My heart raced as I caught sight of the creature, a mass of scaled darkness that slithered into the room, its eyes glistening like twin stars against a shroud of smoke. It prowled the space, sniffing the air, moving with an elegance that made my blood run cold. My breath caught, and I stilled, focusing on remaining silent. Peeking out from our hiding spot, I could see the beast's long, sinuous body twisting as it searched. There was a sickening majesty to it, a predatory grace that elicited both fear and awe. The alarms blared again, the shrieks shaking the deep-rooted silence that had settled. I flinched instinctively, wishing for a miracle or a distraction that would allow us to escape. Just then, Jason's hand touched mine, giving a gentle squeeze. It was the sort of calm I needed to regain my focus. That we had to make a plan. My eyes darted around the room. There were emergency stations along the perimeter, old but functional perhaps. If we could reach one, maybe we could find a weapon or trigger the ship's defense systems. With a glance at Jason, who nodded in understanding, I made my decision. I counted to 3 in my head, and on go, we darted out from our hiding spot. The creature turned instantly, eyes locking onto us, growling ferociously. I felt a primal urge to use the knife, but I knew that would only provoke it further. We zigzagged across the floor, desperation fueling our speed as we dashed toward the nearest station. For a moment, it seemed as if we might escape, but the beast lunged forward, a blur of scales and menace. "Over here!" Jason shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me toward a panel that appeared slightly ajar. Panic surged through me as we slipped inside just as the beast collided with the station, metal shrieking under its bulk. Inside the compartment, we found ourselves in deep shadows, surrounded by clutter. I could hear the creature thrashing outside, determined to find us. There were wires and tools scattered everywhere. My heart pounded as I stumbled across what looked like an emergency beacon. "Do you think it will work?" Jason whispered, eyes wide with uncertainty. "Only one way to find out," I replied, grabbing the beacon and fumbling with its buttons. The creature's growls were still echoing, mingling with the sharp sounds of metal crashing against metal. But as I powered the beacon up, I noticed something strange. The growls shifted, a different sound took their place, almost as if they had morphed into something else. My stomach dropped as realization hit me. The growls had stopped. Panic began to set in when the darkness around us shifted. The air crackled, almost alive. I knew it, whatever was hunting us had been drawn by the beacon. It was intelligent, adapting to our movements, our fears. Keeping a firm grip on the beacon, I waited for a sign, any indication that we did not just hasten our doom. I flicked the light on, bathing the compartment in a pale glow. Jason squinted, eyes adjusting. "What if it sees us?" he murmured, trembling. "Then we fight," I replied, though. Even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice, and then, from the scope of darkness beyond the compartment, a voice emerged. "Jake." "Jason." It was distorted yet familiar. I stiffened, blood running cold. The voice echoed like a ghost imprisoned within the walls. "Who's there?" I called hesitantly. "They're not only looking for you," the voice continued, filled with pain, a frequency that rattled my bones with an unsettling familiarity. It was Jason's voice, but twisted, distorted. "We're all trapped. You must break the cycle. You must." And just like that, the voice faded, dragging a weight of despair with it. "We have to get out of here," Jason pleaded, his fear becoming palpable. "No. We can't just run into the darkness," I insisted, struggling to think. Suddenly, the compartment door bucked violently. The growling returned, ferocious as it crashed against our makeshift barricade, sending shards of metal flying through the air. "Now!" I shouted, ripping the door open and sprinting ahead. Jason followed close behind. The light flickered, casting long shadows, and the room felt alive as we bolted into the main chamber once more. The creature lunged for us again, its form blurring in the light's sporadic glow. I could feel the oppressive darkness pulling at my heels. We dashed towards the exit, heart racing. My feet thundered on the metal as I could hear the growl ramping up, echoing in the abyss. Desperation coursed through me. "Push," Jason yelled, as we reached the next set of doors and flung ourselves through. With a crash, the door slammed shut behind us, and a heavy silence settled in. Breathless, we leaned against the cold metal, trying to process what had just happened. But as I glanced at Jason, the echo of that haunting voice lingered. Something was still out there, and if this was the end of our escape, if our fates were sealed, could we truly escape the darkness that loomed over us? We had fled into the unknown, but questions remained. It wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot.